So hello. Today we are starting on a project. I have no idea how long this is going to take me, but it was occasioned by me doing so every 2 years-ish, I like to do a here's all the books on my TBR video. And when I was doing it this time, it made me think about the fact that my relationship to YA fantasy has changed a lot, I think, in the last 18 months or so. Basically, when I'm in the mood for YA, I'm either tending to go to middle grade fantasy or I'm reaching for YA mystery more than YA fantasy. There are definitely still some YA fantasy books on my TBR that I know I want to read. Some of them are continuations of series that I've already started and enjoy. Some of them I've gotten more recently and I feel more attached to or more strongly like, yes, I do definitely want to read this. But some of them that are kind of before that 18-month-ish window or that were sent to me in PR or whatever, I think it's just time for me to kind of have an evaluation of if I actually want to read them or not. So I've pulled 10 books, which are sitting right here, that we'll talk about here in a second. As I was going through that whole filming process, 10 books stood out to me as ones I either need to basically like fish or cut bait on. So I have never done a try a chapter type video before, but I think that we're going to do that for the first time. And because YA tends to have shorter chapters, I'm gonna give it like 30 to 50-ish pages for each book, basically enough for me to get a flavor of it and to decide if I want to keep reading. And then for any of if I like all 10 of them, that would be an interesting data point to say like, no, okay, maybe you've just not been reaching for YA fantasy as much, but you do still like it. But I'm guessing that some of these are not going to end up appealing to me. So as long as it's not an unreasonable number, whichever of these books I want to still read on in, I will do a vlog for the rest of that. So let's talk about the 10 books in question. So let's start with, I think one of the only ones I got in PR, but that is Broken Wish by Julie C. Dow. So I really like the premise of this, and I did get this recently, but because I didn't request it, I feel like that I should include it in this process. Basically, there is a series, I think it will be 4 total novels, and it's following one family over the course of 4 generations. And so this one is set in Hanau, Germany in 1865. She's like magically, something is gonna happen that I assume will set up her future descendants for the follow-on books. So this one actually does still appeal to me, but because I got it in PR, I figured that this probably was one I should use to either read or not read. Then a book I pre-ordered back in the day is Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angeles. I picked this up because my friend Bethany was raving about this so much, and because it's like a YA fantasy Phantom of the Opera type retelling. Always down for a Phantom of the Opera type retelling, but I just keep not getting to it, so I think I need to decide if I'm actually interested in it or not. Ray Carson, this Walk on Earth, the Stranger, this one came up in my series that I want to start video that I reacted to this year, and I realized like, oh, I do still want to start this. It does still sound interesting to me. It is a YA Western fantasy, which tends to be something I'm more interested in these days. So I actually have pretty high hopes that this is one that's going to click for me, but I have both this and the sequel already, so it feels like I should decide if I'm actually going to read this series, because if not, I should unhaul both of those books. Okay, then we have The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. And this one I want to say is some sort of like speculative high school, like where there's kids that are sort of like the main characters normally in these kinds of stories, like The Chosen One or The Source of All Light. I don't know. So we're following the kids that are not as special in this high school. I heard good things about this back in the day, but I think some of these I should mention, yes, you can see the mark here. Some of these come from my days when I was still ordering from Book Depository and I would just grab things that sounded interesting. So yeah, I think this falls in that category. So we'll see if I actually like it or if that was a pointless impulse purchase. Actually, the next couple of these all, I think, fall in that category. So Illusions of Fate by Kirsten White. At the time, I had not read any Kirsten White. I have since read her adult horror, which I enjoyed. And this one, I don't even know. One ordinary girl will be swept up in a world of romance, deception, and magic. That's right, this is like YA fantasy romance. So yeah, we'll see how I do with this. I liked her writing so far. We'll see how I do with it in YA. This one is not fantasy. This is sci-fi, but Warcross by Marie Lu got so much hype back in the day, and I picked it up on Book Depository because it was super cheap. And yeah, let's find out. I keep not picking it up, so I kind of just wanted to include it in this of like, is this something I'm actually still interested in reading? And then I think this is the last, the Book Depository picks. And that's Flamecaster by Cinda Williams-Chima. It's the first in the Shattered Realms series, and I know she is a big one. I think she's written a lot of YA epic fantasy, kind of like pre-booktube era. So I'm curious. I wanted to try something from her, and this is my opportunity to do it. I have very low expectations that this is going to be one that I go the distance on, but I at least want to try it before I officially move it off the TBR. Okay, and then the last three, this one I've had for a while. This is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. This one I also got at NPR from YA Book of the Month Club back when that was a thing. It's vampire YA historical fantasy, and it was very polarizing. I know some people really love this, other people thought it was really blah, so we'll see how I do. I've not read anything else by Renee Ahdieh, so I don't really have an expectation other than I either want to read this or I want to unhaul it. And then these are more recent picks, but they were, I think, pre-18 months ago, so I wanted to at least, include them. One is Spend the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. Some people hated this, and this is another polarizing one, basically. Some people love this, some people hate this. I think that this is described as YA Fantasy Project Runway, but I've heard that that's a little bit misleading, and it's more like a fantasy romance. I don't know. We'll find out. I at least can have an opinion on where I fall on this one. And similarly, this one has become kind of polarizing. I had this as a 5-star prediction, but since then everybody, I've seen much more mixed reviews of it. I want to decide what I think about it. So that's why I included it. Okay, so those are our 10 books. I'm gonna do my try a chapter / try the first 50-ish pages of it, and I will report back when I have made my decisions about what I'm gonna continue with. Okay, so it has been a week. Maybe more, not sure how long it's been since we first talked, but I have done my due diligence and I am ready to talk to you about my TBR because I could not have planned this better, and I could not have predicted that this would go so well because of the 10 books we talked about, they have sorted themselves into 3 categories as neatly as they could have. And I think that we have some things to talk about for one of these categories that hopefully will get towards the idea of this video, which is me getting better now that I am a woman of 35 at articulating what I do and don't like in YA speculative fiction. So I had 3 books immediately hooked me, and that immediately I was like, yes, I definitely would want to continue with these. So the 3 that are definitely on my TBR are Spend the Dawn, which I will say, when I read that, there's a little sort of teaser page, and I was like, I don't know about this writing, but the first chapter, that's all I had to read to know that I wanted to continue. I should also mention, I was saying I will read, 30 to 50 pages. I actually ended up just going for as long as it took for me to have an opinion. So some of these I did read 50 pages, some of these I just had to read a chapter. This one I just had to read a chapter because I was so hooked by sort of the backstory of this, which is our main character has 3 brothers, all 3 of them end up going to war, 2 of them are killed, and it really changes her family's circumstances. The way that this was told felt almost sort of like kind of a fable or something, and I just really liked the establishing story of this, where her brothers are supposed to be the tailors, her father is a master tailor, and that is her dream. So I know that this is going to end up having a romance component, but I'm really into the overall setup for this. Then Warcross by Marie Lu, which is the only of these, I would say this is the only more sci-fi-y kind of one. This was action-packed in the first chapter. I was totally drawn in and definitely want to keep going. Our main character is a teenage bounty hunter who, I don't know why she's been forced into that, but she acknowledges I'm too young to be having to do this, but I have to survive in this world. And there's some kind of tournament that's going to be happening. Yeah, just the writing was really good. It really grabbed me. this is, I think, a great palate cleansing kind of book. So I definitely want to keep going. And then this one, I do just love YA fantasy Western. I have realized that about myself in the last 2-ish years. I like fantasy Westerns in general, and I also like sci-fi Westerns. I don't really like realistic Westerns, but I like it when there's a speculative element introduced. And our main character in this one is hunting a deer. It was really kind of evocatively conveyed, the actual like death of it. And she can sense gold, and she finds like a little gold nugget, and that is her magic. So yeah, I was just hooked in by the writing in particular for this. So these 3 were easy yeses. I also had 3 easy no's for 3 different reasons. So the rest of us just live here. The writing I could not get into. It was so self-satisfied. I just do not like the writing in this. So this one is an easy no, not interested. The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh, I read more of this than I read of many of them, and I still can't tell. I kept waiting for something to happen, and this is just so boring. I just was not hooked by this at all. It's also historical fantasy, which also at least one other one of these is that I'm not reading. And I don't know that I love YA historical fantasy. I'm kind of thinking maybe. So anyway, did not hook me, not going to continue. And then Illusions of Fate by Kirsten White. I liked the writing, but immediately we have the love interest introduced, and I hated the chemistry between them. This is also sort of historical-ish fantasy vibe. And also, I don't know if this person on the cover is meant to be our main character, but our main character is described as being a person of color, and this, I don't think, communicates that. So also, I don't know, maybe I'm just wrong and this isn't supposed to be our main character, but that kind of, I thought, was a weird choice. Anyway, the romance in this immediately was just a no for me. So we are now left with 4 that I could or couldn't go on with. I don't necessarily feel that strongly about any of them. So like in some ways, doesn't that mean I should just DNF it? So I will say Legendborn, I am struggling with the writing, and I went a pretty long time in this. I got to, I think, yeah, like page 40. I'm on chapter 5. I am struggling with the writing. I like the idea of the Arthurian thing, but I think I'm on the bubble more towards no with this one. I'm on the bubble more towards yes with Broken Wish, because this is a fairy tale retelling. So this is, I think it's kind of a version of like Rapunzel / Rumpelstiltskin, where there's like a witch who is helping someone have a baby, and then they have to like do something in return for that baby. And I don't think that's gonna go well. I like the writing. I like the vibe. I don't know that this feels like a standout, but I think that this could be a nice like palate cleansing kind of read. So now that we're talking about this, actually, I think that I'm going to say that this one is going to go on the TBR because, yeah, it was very quick. Like I got to page 54, 30 minutes. This is going to be a very quick read. So I think this could be a good palate cleanser. So yeah, I think I'm leaning now that we're saying this, not because I think I'm going to love this, but because I think that this would just be nice and I was having a good enough time. These are the 2 I'm most conflicted about. Flamecaster by Cinda Williams Chima. There's nothing wrong with this, but I don't know. It just feels like basic bitch fantasy. Like we got a chosen one. I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards no, because it's not because I hate this or there's something necessarily wrong with this. I don't think I want a basic fantasy YA anymore, especially a series, and I believe that this is the first in a series. It may even be in like a spinoff. So it's not that this is bad by any means. I could see, especially when I was actually a teen and was first like getting into fantasy books, I could have loved this as a teen. I just don't think that this is for me anymore. I just need something a little more grabby or special, I think, for my YA fantasy. So we're talking this through, and I think that we're also going to call this one a no. And then Where Dreams Descend, I don't know. I mean, this one has a cooler premise. I don't like the writing as much. Basically, it seems like there's some kind of like circle. Our main character seems like she's some sort of fire magician person. There's like a circus performance aspect. Yeah, okay, you know what? Just to make this an even split, because these two I feel pretty similarly about, but this one feels a little more exciting to me than this one does. And just so that we have 5 and 5, I gave this one a pretty good shot, and this isn't bad. I just don't think it's for me. This is but I'm remembering now that this was a 5-star prediction for me. It's kind of shocking, right, that I'm DNFing it? Yeah, but I think I'm gonna. It's really the writing. The writing is what I'm struggling with in this one. And I think honestly, if it was a little shorter, I might push through it, but I don't think I'm going to. I'm very surprised by this. Okay, so I'm gonna say that this one's a no, and so then we'll put, this one is the one I'm most on the bubble with the ones I'm gonna read, but I'm gonna keep it on my TBR. So I think where we have landed is that we are gonna do an even split. So I've got 5 speculative books. We've got a YA fantasy Western, we've got a YA fantasy romance competition in an Asian-inspired fantasy world. We've got a YA dystopia type book with a lot of technology stuff. We've got a YA fairy tale retelling, so sort of like a more historically kind of mystery vibe. And then we've got a YA magic competition. I guess we got 2 of those. Okay, so that's a good, interesting data point. So I think that's gonna be what we're gonna read. We're going to unhaul these 5 and DNF them. And I would say of these, if I was going to pick something, or like if I have any lessons for what I don't think I like anymore so far, I think it probably would behoove me to read a sample chapter before I commit to a YA fantasy, because I do think I'm a little pickier about that than I am in other genres. I think that I'm a little harder sell on YA fantasy that's based in history and just sort of like a non-high premise, basic YA fantasy. I just think that, especially if it's the beginning of a series, I just don't know that that's where I'm at anymore. So I'm kind of surprised by these findings, but I am excited to read these. And I think, am I gonna vlog this? I feel like I've already talked a lot in this. I don't know, maybe I may do like a 60-second check-in kind of thing. We'll see. But anyway, honestly pretty surprised by these results, but I feel like this is working out pretty well. So I'll talk to you when I talk to you. Some updates or overall findings. Okay, check-in number 1, Broken Wish by Julie C. Dow. I enjoyed this. I'm glad that I kept going with it, and I only gave it 3.5 stars, and I was only gonna give it 3 stars, but the ending kind of went there in a way I would not have expected a YA fantasy to do, especially because this reads as pretty young YA rather than sort of like more mature YA. I was kind of surprised by that. So that like delighted me and made me bump it up. But I'm totally fine with this being a 3-star because this was exactly what I was wanting. It was a palate cleanser. It felt, because it's young YA, it gave me the same sort of coziness that I enjoy from middle grade fantasy. So I think if I'm gonna take a lesson from this, one of the things that I take a lesson from is it's not long. Like, it's pretty short, and it's younger YA fantasy, which I think tends to work more consistently for me because it's closer to the overall vibe of a middle grade fantasy, which I do enjoy. It is that's like so cozy and lovely and something that I know that I really like these days. So I think my takeaway from this is shorter is good. I like the kind of younger YA fantasy, and also this is not a 1-to-1 fairy tale retelling once I kind of really got into it, but I really loved the fairy tale elements of it, and I liked the retelling elements of it. That does tend to be a winner for me, especially if it's going to be sort of like historical fantasy. Often putting that in the context of some sort of fairy tale is more successful for me than just like general historical fantasy. I think that's true across the board, but I definitely think that's true in sort of younger fantasy literature. So this was a success. I'm glad that I kept going with this. I definitely will read. I have the second one that the publisher sent me as well along with this, and I will definitely read that. Is this something that I'm gonna like love, cherish, remember forever? No. But I really enjoyed the writing, I had a good time, and I thought that this was also just lovely on a thematic level. This is I think a lot about not othering people, and that different people are not bad, they're just different. So I love that thematically. Yeah. So I would say this one was a success. 1 down, 4 to go. Okay, checking in on this one, and I think I've decided to DNF Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angeles. I just don't think the writing in this is for me. It's a lot of, okay, so in terms of thinking of things that I don't like in general, but particularly in YA and particularly in YA fantasy, is a writing style. I don't know if you can see this, but there's all of these like short declarative sentences that I think are meant to be very impactful and dramatic. For me, I mostly find that over dramatic and overwrought. Tonally, it just doesn't really work for me. And I was gonna try to press through, but then I fell asleep while I was reading last night. I got to Act 2. And when I picked it up this morning, I realized that I barely remembered anything that had happened. And I just feel like that's probably a good indication that this is just not for me. So I'm gonna DNF this one. This makes it, what, number 6 that I've DNF'd in this vlog so far. I don't think that this is a bad book from what I can tell. I just don't think it's for me. Okay, let's turn it right way up. I am done with Spin the Dawn. This was exactly what I was looking for. It is yummy, fun candy with good character work, fun fantasy setting. You know, it has moments of emotionality, whatever, and a good plot. I thought the magic was fun. Like, this is what I wanted. I just finished Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb, and I needed a palate cleansing, yum fun candy book. And that's what this was. Like, I would give this between probably like a 3.5 and a 4. I think it's super readable, and I'll keep going, I think, in the series. I've got to figure out if I'm gonna pick it up physically or if I'm gonna unhaul this and go to the library for this. Basically, I can see why some people probably, I remember this got a mixed response at the time. I think that that's understandable because this book really changes. The kind of back of the cover pitch is over by the halfway point of the book. So it's pitched as sort of Mulan meets Project Runway, which the Project Runway part I see, but that's not necessarily the comp I would make. But that is a decent description of the first half of this book. And then it becomes a quest story and it has like a slow burn romance. I really liked that slow burn romance. And yeah, I just found this super readable. It was very page turnery to me. So was this like the best fantasy story I can imagine or that I've read? No, but this did exactly what I want, I think, YA and middle grade fantasy to do for me, which is I enjoyed the palate cleansing aspect, knowing that it wasn't going to get super intense. Yeah, I did really like the romance. And I think that YA romance only really works for me in fantasy. So yeah, it was nice to get some of that. I don't know. I think that this like reading this, I was like, yes, this is the vibe that I'm looking for in YA fantasy. So I feel like this is a good comp title for the vibe that I tend to enjoy in YA fantasy. I also do just really like Asian inspired fantasies, I've realized in the last year or so. There's something about that as the inspiration for the magic and the setting that I tend to really like. So yeah, this one was definitely a success. Even if it's not like the best book I've ever read, it gave me what I want this sub-genre or this type of fantasy book to give me. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. Okay, trying to get an okay angle for you guys here. Hold, please. So I finally finished Walk on Earth, a Stranger. I've just been in such a weird headspace. We've had a lot of difficulties at work, and it's been very hard for me to focus on anything aside from that. So this took me a lot longer to finish than it should have. Some of that is, I think, the book. It is kind of slow burn-ish. I wouldn't say that this is like action-packed YA fantasy, though I say that. When I think about everything that happens, it's not that things are not happening. It's something about the storytelling. It just sort of feels kind of slower, and I don't know. It's very well written. I think the writing is the strength of this book, as well as the setup and kind of overall atmosphere. I think our main character Lee is pretty well developed. I think some of the side characters maybe less so. But basically, Lee can detect gold, essentially like plot things happen that make it so that she's gonna have to set out on her own. She's trying to get to California with her friend Jefferson because she thinks it will be less conspicuous, her ability to detect gold there, than where she currently is in Georgia. So I really love the YA fantasy Western thing. So that really worked for me in this. If I didn't already have the sequel, I'm not sure that I would keep going, but since I do, I will happily keep going. And I'm definitely intrigued to try more from Ray Carson, because I think probably the thing that most impressed me about this was the writing. I think it was really nice quality. Is that something I value in YA fantasy? I'm not sure that it is, but since I've found it, I'm not mad about it. Yeah, 3.5 stars feels right to me. This is really good quality. I don't know that this one connected with me, in part just because of my own stuff, in part probably because of the kind of book it is, but I did like this, and like I said, because I already have the sequel, I'll keep going. Yeah, I'm glad that I finished this one. It just didn't end up being a huge hit, but was still good, still enjoyable, and we'll see after the next book. Yeah, I can't remember if it's a duology or if it's a trilogy. If it is a trilogy, we'll see how I do with the next book, if I'm gonna finish it or not. I would say as successful as it could be given the kind of book it is and my current headspace. We have finished our final book, which is Warcross by Marie Lu, and I really enjoyed this. I'm struggling to decide between these two, which I liked better, but this was just so entertaining and exactly what I was looking for. And I think this kind of helps me seal in on some of the things that I'm looking for, ironically in YA fantasy, but this is YA sci-fi. I am looking for entertainment. I think that that's kind of where I've landed first and foremost. I think often when YA books try to get too deep, they misstep. Some of them, like, I think, how to say this? I don't want to sound condescending, and I don't want to dismiss the fact that there is really good, very thematically rich YA out there. Certainly that's a thing. And I think particularly that's a thing in hard-hitting YA. I don't like hard-hitting YA. It makes me cry, it feels manipulative, and I just don't vibe with that. So for non-hard-hitting YA, I think often it's best served, like, not that it can't have any themes, but trying to be too clever or too theme forward, if that's a thing, I think is not a good route. I think speculative YA fiction for me is best when it is foremost trying to entertain and create characters that the target audience could connect with. That's when I think it is doing its best. This is a good example. This is very entertaining. Now, does it have some thematic concerns in it? Yes, and I think that it asks some interesting questions. I think that honestly, though, the things that keep this from being excellent are when it gets too caught up in trying to answer some of the like ethical dilemmas that it raises, in terms of it's like a dystopian future. The way I would describe this is very similar to Ready Player One, but I like this way better. I think this is a much better executed version of that story, in part because it's not so focused on being referential and it has more room to kind of be its own thing. But basically, our main character is a hacker who hacks into this game called Warcross, and nobody's supposed to be able to do that, so she gets whisked away by this billionaire 21-year-old CEO of this company who I could not with. So there's a romance. Okay, I should just say the part of this book I didn't like was the romance. I just don't believe this like 21-year-old billionaire CEO. Imagine like Christian Grey and Anna, but in a YA sci-fi book. I don't know, guys. I wasn't into the dynamic. I could tell he was supposed to be really sexy and he just did not. I wasn't buying what Marie was trying to sell me with him. But anyway, he whisks her away, and she's a bounty hunter in her day-to-day life. That's how she's been trying to make ends meet. So he wants her to essentially be a bounty hunter for this hacker named Zero. So that's kind of how it gets set up. So she is in the latest round of Warcross games on a team, but she's investigating all of her fellow players. And yeah, I think that this kind of dragged a little bit in the middle, but I really loved the setup. I liked the characters, I liked her, and I liked the kind of twist or the sort of like dun 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 moment at the end. I thought that was really fun. So yeah, I think overall I would definitely call this very entertaining. And I think when it left some of the ethical questions that the setup of this suggests to be sort of in the background rather than putting it into the foreground, it was also successful, I think, thematically. So all that to say, where does this leave us for this experiment? So if we're just strictly talking about enjoyment, I would say, well, clearly the one that I did not enjoy was where Dreams Descend, I ended up adding this to the DNF pile. So I DNF'd a total of 6 books in this project. So that's more books than not I didn't want to keep reading in after I got through the first 50 pages. So I think that that validates my hypothesis coming into this, that I think YA fantasy doesn't connect for me as much as it used to. For the ones I did continue with, there were things about all of them that I liked. These were the Warcross by Marie Lu, Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim were definitely the upper picks, and Broken Wish by Julia C. Dow and Walk on Earth a Stranger by Ray Carson were probably the bottom. So I don't know, something like this-ish I think is the ranking. What did I learn from these books of what I do still enjoy? I think all 3 of these have a good plot as the core of what is happening. So like relatively plot driven, I think, is where I'm at for YA fantasy. I also just noticed that these 3 are all also by Asian female authors. So that's interesting. I have noticed recently in the last year or 2 that I do tend to really like Asian inspired fantasy worlds. I will say Broken Wish is not in an Asian inspired world. Spin the Dawn is of Asian inspired fantasy world. Warcross takes place mostly in Japan, but in like a sci-fi dystopian future. So I don't know. Okay, that's an interesting thought. I think this one, Broken Wish, helped me really hone in on the fact that often what I want from younger fantasy now is more middle grade. This read a little bit younger and I really liked that. It felt like a palate cleanser in a way that was really enjoyable for me. So I think probably I'm right. I think that this helped me, again, validate my hypothesis, which is I think a lot of my energy for younger fantasy is more towards middle grade these days. These are both duologies, and I looked up the ratings for the second one, and both of their sequel books have lower ratings, even though there are fewer ratings, and that is very unusual for a sequel. So I don't know what that says, but duologies, I think super long series, not necessarily something I'm looking for in YA fantasy these days. This might be a duology too, I didn't look it up. But this was very, like the writing in this was really lovely, and I think just a really cool setting. So I think also if there's just a setting or sort of a really grabby premise, that could also be a winner for me. So all that being said, this was a project well worth doing. I think I, got 10 books off of my TBR, so that was exciting. And I think I have a little more self-awareness going into the future for my YA fantasy / sci-fi. I know I kind of snuck in this one, and ironically, it might have been the one I liked the best. The best of any of them. I know that this was not fantasy, but speculative, okay? I have a lot more self-awareness about my preferences of YA speculative fiction going forward. So I think that that is definitely a win. So yeah, let me know if you've read any of the books I talked about, if you're upset that I DNF'd any of them, if you have enjoyed any of the ones I talked about or hated any of the ones I talked about, let me know in the comments below. Has your taste in YA literature changed over time if you're somebody who has read and enjoyed YA as an adult? I know that's not for all adults, but I have been one to enjoy YA books even as an adult, so yeah, I've just noticed that my taste has changed a little bit over time. So let me know if that's been true for you too. So yeah, I think that will do it for me. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!